Welcome to Get a Word In, a podcast about content marketing. I'm your host, Adam Walker. I'm passionate about sharing stories and knowledge through content, especially in the form of podcasting. In fact, I co-founded Edgewise.media, a podcast-first marketing content agency. On this show, I interview content marketers at some of the top companies in the world and discover what's working for them, what isn't, and most importantly, what's next. So stay tuned and get ready for some great content about content marketing. My guest on the show today is Mickey McDermott from Circa Healthcare. Mickey, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Adam. Glad to be here.
Let's start off with who you are, what you do, what your days look like.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Mickey McDermott, and my title is Head of Content and Engagement Strategy at Circa. Circa is a strategic marketing and marketing communications agency, and we specialize in animal health. So for the most part, that includes products, health vaccines, other health preventives and treatments that are targeted to the veterinary market. So the veterinarians recommend or prescribe them, and we do the advertising and the promotion and the education around them. My role is in content strategy, trying to make sure that the approach we take to pushing content out to the audiences helps communicate the benefits of the brands as well as possible in all the right channels and in all the right sequence. So that's basically my job. My day is kind of interesting because it can span from being involved in very mundane tasks like reviewing copy documents for an email series to working on positioning an entire company. So in figuring out what the brand story is and how they want to tell their story to the world. So that's what I really like about it, is it's a very varied job. And as you know, I'm sure content can really encompass a wide range of things, and that's the way it is in my job as well.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like marketing can encompass a wide range of things in general. And that's what I love about it, is like marketing. I always tell people, like, marketing is really not about marketing. It's really about problem solving. And if you're a good problem solver, you're probably going to be a good marketer. The best marketers I've ever met are problem solvers.
Oh, I agree with that. I agree with that completely. It's that if you can identify some of the barriers that are preventing people from engaging with a company or a brand, then that's problem solving, right? So you figure out, how do you overcome those barriers or get people to think differently about something? And that's a classic problem.
Or even just like discover the right questions to ask. Like a lot of people are focused on the wrong fit. Like I was looking at a company the other day and they were saying they needed help with SEO because they're getting all this traffic to their website, but it's not converting into sales. And I was like, well, the first question is, are you getting good traffic? It's not even an SEO question. Like it's, are you getting good traffic? If it is good traffic, why aren't they converting? What's wrong with your website? What's wrong with your sales funnel? What's wrong with your copy? It's not really an SEO problem. It's really a marketing problem.
It is. You're right. The moment you said that, it made me think that's not really an SEO problem unless they're not getting anybody to visit their site. If they're getting people to their site and they're not converting, then SEO isn't the problem. It's, are you getting the right people, as you said, and is the information those people encounter on the site compelling enough to make them want to go further?
Yeah, that's right. All right, well, let's dive into content marketing, because your role is head of content, which I love. So let's start off with what's working in content marketing right now.
I'll speak for the most part about our business because that's what I'm most familiar with, the animal health field. And the animal health field, I would say, has probably been a few steps behind, certainly behind consumer product marketing in thinking about content. Because before it was considered that, at least for a lot of the products we deal with, it require either the recommendation or a prescription of a veterinarian, that as long as you can convince the vet that the product had the right clinical benefits to be worth prescribing, then your job was done. And they were all dealt like as a monolithic audience. Well, now we have different kinds of vets that are identified by a lot of market research and insight gathering that they're now doing, the companies are now doing, and they all have different sets of personalities and motivators and drivers. And then they encounter pet owners or livestock producers, because we deal with that side of the business too, that have different personalities and drivers. So they may need to each have a different story told to them in order to convince them that this brand or this service is right for them. And at least companies are starting to come around, I think, to that idea and doing a good job of profiling customers, figuring out where they get their information, and then using that to drive content strategy. So I think that's a good thing that's happening. I think that if there's anything that it remains to be a challenge, it's being able to get the information that you have in order to make decisions about what's the journey like, what the touch points are, and what channels and type of content do you push through those touch points to help create a relationship with the customer. It's still thought of. I think there's a little ways to go in that still, which is good because then people like you and I have some value.
Yeah, we still have a role. We still have a role to play. I guess it's kind of good to know that like that's a universal problem, you know, where you're like, okay, we're going to make a marketing plan. All right, tell me about your target market. Okay, you don't actually know anything about your target market. Okay, now tell me about like, and you're like trying to pull this information out of them, like almost like it's out of the ether or something, you know, which is always entertaining.
You know what I think another opportunity is, and I think this kind of touches a little bit on your question, is I'm a big believer. I've become a bigger believer in the last few years, and this is an overused phrase, but telling customer-centric brand stories rather than product-centric brand stories. And that's just as simple as saying, instead of saying, like what might have happened in the past was a marketer would say, we have to communicate this points about product X in order for it to be appreciated more than product Y and product Z. And I think now a lot of clients, and we certainly are coming around to the idea that you can figure out what the customer, what the audience member wants to do that could be impacted by the product, then put the product in the middle of that story and then help them create kind of a scenario that they want to live out, and the brand might play a role in that. And so if that can influence content, I think that's kind of exciting because then it allows the brand to develop a relationship that doesn't seem at all forced. It seems almost natural, and it seems to earn a place in that customer's life.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that's the key is like the customer really should be the center of the marketing. It's really about them. It's really not about the product. It's about how the product or the service or whatever is going to benefit them as the customer, right? So, yeah. All right. So that's what's working well in content marketing. What's not working in content marketing? What are you shying away from right now?
Let me think about this for a moment, Adam. I think not shying away so much, but somewhat limited in being able to use the full force of all the channels. So I think that we could use social media more if we learned how to do influencer marketing or just use social media as a communications channel. And the challenge that we have and that our clients have are pretty much the same challenge that pharmaceutical companies have, which is you have to exercise some caution in pushing stuff out on social media because all these are regulated products and you need to be able to monitor everything in case a mention of an adverse event comes up. So that kind of makes people err on the side of caution, and I think it limits the effectiveness to which social media can be used a little bit. So I think we need to find a way around that to both be proper stewards of the regulatory requirements and take advantage of this channel, which a lot of audience groups really lean on for their information.
Increasingly so, right? So now I'm curious about that then, since you mentioned it. Based on what you just said, what channels are you leaning into? Like, are you leaning into any social channels at all? Or are you staying mostly on like website, paid media, and email? Like what's your channel mix look like?
Yeah, great question. So there's still, believe it or not, a big influence on what I would call like the rep delivered channel, which is a sales rep walking into a veterinary hospital and having an engagement with a vet or maybe a new member of the veterinary team. And then we create promotional tactics for them to carry in there. And that can range anywhere from just like a reminder card that they hand to the person at the front desk to a detailer. They still actually use, detailers, increasingly digital detailers. But then, so that's the stuff that walks into the vet's office. And then we can equip the reps with the capability to send email series to their customers that look like it's coming from the rep, and it's signed by them and stuff. And so personalized emails. And then we can also send, and then there can also be email that we use that are done by us in the company that can send out, either nurturing series or even selling series or provide information. Webinars are used in it to an increasing extent. particularly when a new product is being introduced and you need to get all the information about that, and then perhaps maybe share some firsthand experience from people who were involved in the trials for the product and can tell peers about it. And then conferences like the ones that are coming up in January and February in the vet space, those are very useful. And so there you have traditional convention booths, events that companies put on, lectures that companies have. And then on the influencer front, there's both social media influencers, which we do use to a certain extent. There's a lot of well-known ones in veterinary medicine. And then there are what are traditionally called in pharma and vet medicine the KOLs, who are usually the academic, seasoned researchers that are experts in different fields. And we use them to speak both in live events and on webinars and sometimes to author articles. They're publication planning.
Okay. Wow. In the mix of what we just talked about, there wasn't much mention of a social media channel. So are you just is social media just kind of a little more low key for you at this time?
So each of the companies has their own social media channel for the most part that we deal with. A lot of times, to be honest, if they lean into LinkedIn, they'll do stuff on LinkedIn, and they may have a YouTube channel. So that's the typical, from what I know, the animal health setup. They have LinkedIn messages that come out a couple times a week. Sometimes we have some role in helping to create those. They also have YouTube videos, and sometimes the LinkedIn leads to a YouTube video. I'm sure there's stuff on TikTok. I'm sure there's stuff on Instagram. And for whatever reason, probably because of the veterinary professional focus of most of what we do, we don't get involved with that. I should say that for a lot of the big brands in animal health, the companies will often hire big, usually network attached consumer agencies to do television advertising and some social media stuff. And so I don't mean to say that our experience reflects the industry in total. There's probably more social media being done than we're actively involved in.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah. Just curious. All right. So last question related to content in particular. If you were forced to focus on one thing for the next year, for all of 2023, what one thing would you double down on?
Honestly, I would double down on getting a better handle on how to match the different customer profiles we create and that we create with our clients with customer journeys and having coordinated, synchronized, synergistic content strategies to serve the brand for the whole year. I think right now the tactics are too separated and not integrated enough. So integrating all the different tactics and the content that goes into those tactics more effectively is what I would do.
Man, that's the dream right there. You're talking about the dream. That's it.
Maybe a little bit of an elusive dream, but I think it's the right way to go, because then and only then does everything work like it should. So even if you can't reach that perfection in 2023, gosh, what if we get 20% closer to it? That would be a win.
That's right. And if you get 20% closer to it, how much more effective will your marketing be? And that'll increase sales and increase revenue and everything else. So it doesn't have to be perfect.
No, because I think any effort that strives toward that is going to raise the bar. I really do.
That's right. All right, Mickey. Well, let me summarize our conversation up to this point. I've been taking notes. And then at the end of that, tell me if I missed anything, or let's see if you have anything you want to add. So related to content marketing, related to what's working, you said targeting segment audiences through market research and customizing the messages for each segment, which I love. And if any marketer has time to do that, we need to be doing that. You also said getting info from customers that you need in order to create that strategy is not always easy, but telling customer-centric brand stories instead of product-centric brand stories is key. I'm just going to say that again because it was so good. We need to be telling customer-centric brand stories, not product-centric brand stories. For what's not working, you said you're limited in using some of the full force of some of the channels just because of capacity. And then you mentioned that you have to err on the side of caution because it's a regulated industry, and I totally get and respect that. And that's, as a marketer, that's a hard space. Any regulated industry is a hard space to be in. So I really admire the work you're doing there. For what channels are working, you mentioned sales reps in vet hospitals, emails with email automation and drip campaigns, webinars, and going to conferences, which you're getting ready to do in the very near future. And for where would you focus? I love this. It's the dream. You said match the different customer profiles with customer journeys and match those to specific content strategies for each customer profile, which again, as a content marketer, that's what we always want to do. I love that. So Mickey, did I miss anything, or is there anything you want to add before we wrap up here?
No, I really don't think you. As a matter of fact, you said it a lot more succinctly than I did. So I think you captured it. You captured it the way I wish I would have captured it. But I think that I think the other thing that comes to mind is that, and it's aligned with making these content laden tactics synergistic, is that in our business there's a customer called the veterinarian, or the veterinary professional, I should say, because vet nurses and techs and other people in the clinic are just as important. Then there's a customer called the pet owner or the livestock producer. And there's a moment of truth where those two come together. And if everything that we've been talking about can help seed the ground for the best, most productive conversation that happened between those two people, then the brand's going to really do well. And so that's another one of those perfect world dreams that we have in mind. How do we create that moment of truth?
Yeah, how do you create and connect those two people in the right ways with the right messaging? So, well, Mickey, this is great. Thanks for joining me on the show today, and I'll make sure to invite you back again sometime soon.
You're welcome. Thanks a lot for having me, Adam.
Thanks for listening to Get a Word In, brought to you by Edgewise.media, a podcast-first marketing content agency. To learn more about Edgewise, visit www.edgewise.media. I'm your host, Adam Walker. To connect with me, check out my blog at adamjwalker.com. Thanks for listening, and make sure to subscribe now so you don't miss our next great conversation about content marketing.